In today's video, we're going to redesign these badly designed rudders. We're going to start the fabrication process, and we're also going to lament the passing of the British summer.
All of the snow in this winterland used to look so pretty, now making me moody. In the deep woods, alone with my fields, spend too much time thinking. In the end, you'll be with me.
Before we get started, a quick apology. The next 10 minutes of this video are all about rudder science, but don't worry, there's plenty of steel bashing coming straight after it. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking it's not even December and he's got the Christmas tree up. Well, it's not me, it's Rachel. She likes Christmas trees, she likes Christmas. A bit early, I know. Anyway, while it's snowy outside, I don't feel like going down to the boat, so let's get stuck into some rudders and some rudder theory. Let me show you what I've been doing. So let's do a quick diagram. This is the design of the rudder as designed by Van der Valk, and you can see we've got a leading edge and we've got a trailing edge to the rudder. So we've got a quick plan view and a view also from the side. So there's a few design problems, I believe, with the original design of the rudders by Van der Valk, and I believe that the reason behind this is just shortcutting. Time, expense, I don't know, but there were definitely some shortcuts taken in the building of this boat. There's a couple of issues with the rudder. The first issue, though, is that of counterbalance. So what counterbalance is, it's looking at the ratio of the area of the rudder that is forward of the pivot point compared to the total area of the rudder. If you have too much area in front of the pivot point, there's a tendency for the relative water flow to want to turn the rudder, and if there's not enough, it makes the helm steering very, very heavy, particularly if it's manual or cable steering. So you have to get the right ratio of balance, and the ratio of balance does vary depending on certain features of the boat, like its speed, for example. There's lots of different ideas out there about where the sweet spot lies, but I would say it's roughly between about 16 and 20%. So that means 60 to 20% of the area of the rudder should be forward of the pivot point. So in this diagram, that's the ratio of A to A plus B. So a few of you might not be interested in the algebra, but I did do some mathematics for those who are interested for my rudder, because it's a particular shape, to sort of calculate what the percentage of counterbalance would be for my rudder, depending on how much of it protruded forward from the pivot point, because what I want to do is just move the pivot point forward or backwards. And the formula was fairly simple. It was just 0.22x, and that gave us a percentage. X being that distance, of course, the bit that protrudes. So the original distance from the pivot point to the leading edge was 100 mils. So 100 times 0.22 gave us 22, and that's 22%. So the initial counterbalance ratio was 22%, which is not a million miles away, and some people would actually say that's reasonable for the boat, and it probably is. But as you slow the boat down, really the sweet spot needs to come down in percentage, and I don't intend to be racing around 18 knots everywhere. I can't afford that. So we'd be cruising at probably 12 to 14 knots. So a percentage lower than that would be better anyway. But the sweet spot would probably be 15 to 20%. And I believe that the right sweet spot for the boat as intended to be used should be around about 18%. So I set the leading edge to be 85 millimeters away from the pivot point. Now, the second problem that was more concerning that I mentioned before was the shape of the leading edge profile. Now, the way that rudders work, which are hydrofoils, is very similar to the way that an aerofoil works. The most hydrodynamic shape is generally a teardrop shape, modified ellipse teardrop, with a ratio of between 1 to 5 and 1:6. And that's a ratio of the chord length to the maximum diameter of the teardrop. So what happens with the rudder is as you turn a rudder, it changes the angle that it presents itself, the angle of attack, to the relative water flow. And then the water has to flow round the top of the rudder, which is the low pressure side, but also has to flow underneath the rudder, okay, on the bottom side of the rudder, which is the high pressure side. So what that does, because you get this separation in the water, one is a high pressure and the other is a low pressure, the difference between the pressure creates lift, and that's how a rudder works. Now, there are some people who believe that rudders create the turning moment by the resistance in the water, and that's not true. You can create a turning moment with resistance, and some people do use that in emergency steering. You know, you've probably heard people taking the doors off the cabinetry inside to use it as an emergency rudder if their rudder has failed. And the way that that works is by resistance, creating drag and pushing the stern of the boat round. But that is not an efficient hydrodynamic way of steering a boat. That is not how rudders work. Now, what happens with the hydrofoil is as you increase the angle that the rudder turns and presents itself to the relative water, that angle, if it gets too high, can actually create what we call a stall. Now, a stall is caused by separation of the water as it flows around the hydrofoil from the surface of the hydrofoil. Now, a stall does two things. First of all, you get a loss of lift, but secondly, it also induces a lot of drag. So the rudder becomes extremely inefficient. Now, normally the maximum angle of a rudder is roughly 16 to 18%. That's where the stall occurs. 16 to 18%, which is why normally the helm of a boat has a range of about 36 degrees. And it's because of that. Because if you turn the rudder anymore, you will just induce a stall, which is inefficient. It's not going to create any turning moment or not by lift, and it's going to create a lot of drag. Now, the problem with a pointed edge is that stall comes much earlier. Now that happens with sharp leading edges on rudders. So you get an early stall point, which means it will stall at a much less angle. So again, the rudder becomes very inefficient, particularly at low speeds. So the tip shape was wrong. And again, I believe that was purely because of manufacturing ease. What we actually need is a teardrop shape. And the most hydrodynamic shape is a teardrop section that has a ratio of the chords to the maximum width around the pivot point of about 6 to 1. And well, it's 5 to 1 to 6 to 1. That's kind of the sweet spot. So that was the next thing that I wanted to change. Is I wanted to create the cross-sectional profile of the rudder to be a teardrop with a ratio of between 1 to 5 and 1 to 6. And that works quite well because if you look at the shape of the rudder, you'll see as it goes towards the tip, it gets smaller. So we end up with a shorter chord line. So it seemed intuitive to have a chord ratio of 1 to 5 at the tip. As it was shorter, we can keep the same diameter, and a chord or ratio of 1 to 6 at the top where we have the longer chord length. So then in the design of the rudder, if you look at the chord lengths of the rudder as it transitions from the root at the top down to the tip, it goes from 1 to 6 to 1 to 5. So all of the teardrop profiles and the profile of our rudder, which changes shape, is in the sweet spot, 1 to 5 to 1 to 6. So with all those parameters in mind, looking at the counterbalance and the shape of the cross-sectional area, we've plugged that into CAD software to redesign the rudder, keeping the same area of the rudder as we go. Now, there'll be a few of you out there that say, well, hang on a minute, Shaun, but you're going to increase the drag of the rudder because you're going to make it wider. And that's true. The width of the rudder is going to go from being about 60 mil to about 80 mils thick. And that could increase the drag. We call that form drag. That's the actual drag because of the shape and the form of the rudder. I I would argue that it's possible that it might increase the form drag slightly, but given that it's a more hydrodynamic shape, it might not. But what's more important, that even if we do increase the amount of form drag, we will reduce the amount of induced drag caused by the turning of the rudder. And given that rudders are very seldom fixed straight, you'll find if you've ever got an autohelm system that the autohelm is constantly putting in movements into the steering of a boat, that induced drag is quite important in the efficiency of a boat. And I would say that the small amount of increased form drag potentially will be easily outweighed by the vast reduction in induced drag as we turn the rudders. That's my belief. Overall, I believe we'll have a rudder that will be more efficient at low speeds and will also be more efficient at cruise speeds. I believe that, knowing something about the theory, and I'm prepared to put my money on that. But we shall see. Right, so let's show you then the CAD drawings. So here's the rudder. Looking from the side, you'll see it's exactly the same shape as the original rudder. Same shape, same area. What is different is you'll see as we drag it around, we now have a teardrop profile. And the other difference is the rudder post has been moved towards the leading edge by 15 millimeters. So it was initially 100 millimeters from the center. It's now 85 millimeters from the center to change that counterbalance. There's also been some changes to the actual structural design. I'll show you that by just removing the outside skin. And you'll see here we've now got a rib system. We didn't have that before. And what I wanted to do is try and distribute the load of the rudder throughout the rudder. So we've got a shaft that goes a little bit deeper. There is a slight modification to this now in that I'm having solid rudder post to here, and then downwards will be hollow rudder post. That gives us the strength we need at the top with some rigidity at the bottom of the rudder. This tip shaft here is really for constructional purposes, to give it some rigidity while we build it. You can see these ribs, the 4 internal ribs, they decrease in size as they go from the root down to the tip. This is the tip cap. That's going to cap over the top of the rudder and be welded on. And this is the root cap that will be capped over the top of the rudder and welded on. So this diagram now, if we remove the rudder posts and we remove the tip shaft, you can see here that we have 6 profiles. Those 6 profiles lend themselves well to being transferred straight into a 3D printer, and what I've done is I've 3D printed up all of these profiles to make templates to actually make the parts we need for the rudder. I could have sent the drawings off to have them laser cut. The reason I didn't, twofold. One was time, second was cost. They are more expensive, although it's a drop in the ocean when it comes to the cost of renovating this boat. And the third reason I didn't send it is I kind of like the idea of trying to hand form these, make them myself, so I know that this rudder is 100% built by my own hands. So there we go. So let's show you what we've done with the 3D printer in making the templates. So here's the templates, all 3D printed up. A little beautiful little handle on there, but the handle's to stick 2 prints together and hold the template. So we've got 4 internal ribs. As you can see, they gradually get smaller, so that our profile goes from 1 in 6 to 1 in 5. And these are the 2 caps. This is the top, which will go over, and this is the bottom, which will go on the ends, will cap the rudder. Right, templates ready. So let's take these templates, take them down to the boat and make a start making the ribs for the new rudders. Right, another day in paradise. Back down here after being away for a few days while I've been doing rudder bits and pieces, clean computer rudder bits and pieces. I've just come back and as per, lots of wet. So patching that hole didn't really do a huge amount of good. Let me show you. Just stuck the heater on, get things dry. So every week, more and more water. So we do have a plan. We've got a heavy duty tarpaulin coming. Not these lightweight, I think these are about 100 gram per square meter, these blue things. I've got coming a 600 gram per square meter tarpaulin. Thank you very much, Heath Pilkington, VIP member, who's kindly bought us one of those. Really am grateful, thank you, Heath. So that's coming, we'll get that on soon. That'll take a few days to get here. In the meanwhile, got some work to do. Check out the water, the drips that have been coming out of the deck drains. I thought the bucket would be enough, but luckily I sprayed a load of oil on here, so it's managed to keep most of it kind of dry. There's a little bit there, but I've bought some more ACF 50. Right, first thing, let's empty this bucket. Now I've got my welding gas bike, what I'd like to do is make some lugs so that we can lift this steel up without these straps getting in the way, because they kind of get underneath the steelwork and prevent us from lifting it up flush. So let's make some lugs, and while we're at it, we'll make some dogs and wedges for a little bit later on.
Something I forgot about. This has got to come out. I forgot to clean this up. So this is existing hull, and I'm trying to pull hull onto existing hull here at the moment. Angle looks about right, but I need to remove that so that plate can come up another 4mm.
So I'm just letting you know, I went home last night with a hump on because of this grinder. So I was grinding the steel out at the side of the boat and it snagged. You can probably see the disc if you look closely. Got snagged. And it snagged and it naturally tightened the disc up. And now I can't untighten that disc, and I've had all sorts on it. I've had a big Allen key with a bar on it and it just won't give. So I really lost my temper with that. I'll be getting back to that shortly, or throwing it in the bin. What I have done though is I've had other problems. I've bought myself a toy and I bought one of these lift magnets, and the reason I've done that is because when I've been using the tabs that we weld into, as we jack the steel up towards where the pulley is, where the winch is, it pulls it in that direction and it pulls it out of line if I've kind of lined it up. Now, I've got a problem because I'm on my own, and if there was two of us, it would be easy for one to hold it while we jack it up and pin it in place. But I can't do that on my own. So there are ways around it. I mean, I could jack it up with this and then put some straps on it and pull it in various directions. That's possible, but I've decided to try this lift magnet because what I can do is move that magnet into different positions and pull it and see if I can pull it perfectly into place. We'll see how we get on. Before I do that though, I want to prep this bench up a little bit. So we're going to be doing a lot of steel work on this bench in the future because of the rudders. And I'm going to do all the rudder work in here.
But to do that, I need a vise and a bench grinder. So I've bought one specially for the shed here, and I'm just going to put those in place first. Then we'll get back to that other grinder, or as I said, throw it in the bin. What I could really do with now is my centre punch, which was bought for us from our Amazon wish list. Thank you very much. But I can't find it. It's kicking around somewhere. And I've just searched the whole bloody place, but it'll just turn up from somewhere. So I'll have to try and figure a way around it. But thank you for the centre punch anyway. So if it focuses right, you can probably see there we've removed that edge Hopefully then the steel will land a little bit better as we crank it up. Let's have a look. There we go. That shows how rubbish they are. Supposed to be 300 kilograms. We're getting close. The problem is, it's tight up here now, and it's loose in that bottom corner. And if I winch from here, then use brute force to bring it up in that corner, this is going to fail and it's going to drop again. So what I'm thinking about doing is just taking this eye off here. I've just welded it on one side, hopefully. I welded it at the end there a bit. If I can knock that off, I'm going to weld it on up in that corner. That's where you find lost tools. So we've got it pulled up here. That magnet there, I don't think that's in the best place. And we've kind of got the edge in the right place here. You see the bend? The problem I've got is the bend on the original is quite sharp because that's been cut and welded. And that's something I didn't think about. The bend has been bent, so there's a radius on it, which poses a little bit of a problem. Makes me think then, and maybe next time I should cut it. We'll see how we go. This magnet's pulling it more from the back and tightening up that gap in that corner than it is from the front. But then we have 4mm of steel here that it's landing on. And when I cut that away, hopefully this edge will come up and these gaps will close in. Now, one of the lessons to learn, particularly if you look at the lesson learned from the angle grinder, is that the worst time to do anything that needs a lot of care and attention is at the end of the day. And my next job now is to double check and measure everything and make sure the steel's landed in the right place, and then start cutting the edge of the old steel and getting it into place and then start tack welding it. But I think to do that, it's a bad idea to do it now because I think I'll do it badly. It needs to be a fresh day. I think as well, to give myself the best fighting chance, I ought to get some more of these pulleys rather than using the ratchet straps. The ratchet straps just don't give us enough pull and enough strength. So I'm going to have to order a couple of those. That's another Amazon job. That'll take a day or two. It might be tomorrow, might be the day after. So it's not looking good for getting the steel in for this video. I've got another day of work ahead of me before I publish the video, so maybe we'll get stuck back into the rudder. I am enjoying doing the rudder. I think I'm going to go home. I think I fancy a curry. Right, look at the state of the place. It's absolutely wet through. as per usual, and it is something we're going to be sorting out. Come round here. Come on, there we are, gimbal. It's chucking it down now. I did plug up the deck drains up there with the cork plugs, but now we're finding new drips coming in from the blue tarpaulin up above. They're tiny little holes. I'm sure they're getting bigger, but they're enough just to drip in when it's chucking it down like it is outside. Now, there are plans afoot, as you know, to make the place dry. As I mentioned, I think earlier in this video, we've got a heavy-duty 600 gram per square metre tarpaulin coming. That's going to be here in the next couple of days, I believe, but it's not going to be here for now. I have got this that's been sent. Where is it? Jerry Baker, Amazon wish list. Thank you, my friend. Sent me this. Actually, it wasn't on the wish list, but he bought me some PPE and also sent me this. Seriously strong repair tape. I'm not going to put it on now because it's chucking it down, and we'll just live with what we've got. But what I am going to do is when we get the tarpaulin and we get to put that up, we'll put some of this tape on some of these holes up here. This looks like it's good stuff. Thank you, Jerry. Right, what we need to do now is do something a little bit more constructive. Let's get on with these rudders. I have been enjoying the whole design process. I've got the templates. They're here in a little pile, and what I'm going to start doing is cutting out these templates and get ready to rebuild these rudders. Right then, enough grinding. That is the bottom ribs done. And by bottom ribs, I actually mean the cap on the bottom of the rudder. These are a little bit different to the internal ribs
and these are a little bit oversized because the internal ribs go inside the 4mm skin. These go on the outside of the 4mm skin, so because these kind of cap the bottom of the rudder, they can be a little bit oversized, and we can grind them back afterwards. And indeed, what I've done is I've just made them, if you look, slightly oversized, and that's so when we put these on the rudder, just to be absolutely sure we've got a little bit of tolerance, we can grind that back. The internal ribs, of course, are better off too small rather than too big, and these are better off too big rather than too small. Two, because that's one for each rudder. I'll just check a bit of this ACF 50 on, as you know what it's like in here. Job's a good un. Anyway, thoroughly wet through in here, but I've had some good news from home. That's the new tarpaulin. That weighs an absolute ton. That's ready to go, but if you look now, snow's being replaced by rain again. The rain's forecast for the next couple of days. So I'm not going to put the tarpaulin on today. I'm not going to put it on tomorrow. I believe Saturday is the next window, and hopefully I've got the daughter and son-in-law coming down to give me a hand. Right, I just wanted to say thank you very much to each and every one of you. Also, we've had a few more members and super legends, and I wanted to say thank you. I didn't notice when people join the membership program on YouTube, it doesn't send me a message, and I had a look and we've had a few more members, so thank you very much. I'll put you in the scrolling credits at the end. Don't forget, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Please do subscribe. Hit the bell icon, that way you get notifications. When you've given us a thumbs up, if you're on a mobile device, please do hit that hype button. Apparently that helps. I hope you enjoyed the video because I really enjoyed making it. Until the next video, thanks for watching. Bye for now.
We first met when the leaves were